Right now, at this very moment, you are standing in the middle of infinite abundance, yet most of you are experiencing lack, limitation, and struggle. Why? Because you have been trained to see with the eyes of poverty instead of the eyes of truth. Your bank account may say one thing, your circumstances may tell another story, but I am here to tell you something that will shake the very foundation of everything you believe about money, success, and prosperity. You are not poor because the world lacks resources. You are not struggling because opportunities are scarce. You are experiencing limitation because you have been thinking limitation. You are living in poverty consciousness while surrounded by the wealth of the universe. What would happen if I told you that every single thing you see in your life right now, your financial situation, your relationships, your health, your opportunities, is nothing more than a photograph of your habitual thinking? What if every condition you call permanent is actually temporary, and every limitation you call real is actually an illusion created by the way you have been using your mind? Most people live their entire lives backwards. They look at their circumstances and let those circumstances determine their thoughts and feelings. They see lack in their bank account and think thoughts of poverty. They see limited opportunities and feel hopeless. They observe struggle and decide that struggle is their destiny. This is living life from the outside in, and it will keep you trapped in the very conditions you want to escape. But there is another way. There is a way of living from the inside out, where your thoughts and feelings create your circumstances, instead of your circumstances creating your thoughts and feelings. This is the way of abundance consciousness, and it is available to every single person in this room right now. Let me tell you about a man I knew who understood this principle. He was a baker, working 16 hours a day in a small shop, barely making enough to feed his family. Every morning he would wake up worried about money. Every evening he would go to bed exhausted and discouraged. His thoughts were constantly focused on what he lacked. More customers, more money, more time, more help. One day, something shifted in his thinking. Instead of starting his morning by counting his problems, he began his day by giving thanks for the abundance that was already present in his life. He gave thanks for the flour, the water, the yeast that would create beautiful bread. He gave thanks for his hands that could shape the dough. He gave thanks for his customers, even though there were few. He gave thanks for his small shop, even though it was cramped. But here is the crucial part. He did not stop at gratitude. He began to act as if he were already the successful baker he wanted to become. He improved his recipes as if he were serving hundreds of customers instead of dozens. He organized his shop as if it were the finest bakery in the city. He treated every customer as if they were the most important person in the world. He worked with joy instead of drudgery, with enthusiasm instead of resignation. Within 6 months, his small shop had a line of customers every morning. Within a year, he had opened a second location. Within 2 years, he owned the most successful bakery in his entire region. Did the world change? Did money suddenly appear from nowhere? Did luck strike him like lightning? No. His outer world changed because his inner world changed first. He stopped living from his circumstances and started living from his consciousness. Now some of you are thinking, but that is just one story. That is just luck. That is just coincidence. And this is exactly the kind of thinking that keeps you trapped in limitation. You are so committed to your excuses that you would rather stay in poverty than admit that you have the power to change your conditions. Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly, even if you only answer to yourself. What if every limitation you see in your life is nothing more than a belief you have been carrying around like an old worn-out coat? What if you could take off that coat of limitation and put on the garment of abundance? Would you do it? Or have you become so comfortable with your struggles that you cannot even imagine living without them? The truth is that your outer world is a perfect mirror of your inner world. Your life is not happening to you, it is happening through you. Every thought you think, every word you speak, every assumption you make is creating your experience. If you are experiencing lack, it is because somewhere in your consciousness you are holding thoughts of lack. If you are experiencing struggle, it is because somewhere in your mind you believe that life must be difficult. This is not about positive thinking or pretending that problems do not exist. This is about understanding the fundamental law that governs all manifestation, the law that consciousness creates form, that mind creates matter, that your inner state determines your outer state. Most people use their minds like broken records, playing the same thoughts of limitation over and over again. I cannot afford this. I do not have enough. Times are hard. Money is tight. I am unlucky. Things never work out for me. And then they wonder why their lives are filled with experiences that match these thoughts exactly. Your mind is not just a computer that processes information. Your mind is a creative force that is constantly producing your experience. Every thought you think is a seed that will grow into a condition in your life. Every word you speak is a decree that the universe rushes to fulfill. Every assumption you make about yourself and your possibilities becomes the blueprint from which your life is constructed. Right now as you sit here, your mind is creating your future. The thoughts you are thinking today are becoming the experiences you will have tomorrow.
The words you speak this week are shaping the opportunities that will come to you next month. The assumptions you make about your limitations are building the walls that will contain your life.
But here is the magnificent truth that will set you free. You can change your thoughts. You can change your words. You can change your assumptions. And when you change these things, you automatically change your life. The person experiencing poverty is not poor because of external circumstances. They are poor because they are thinking poverty thoughts, speaking poverty words, and assuming poverty limitations. The person experiencing abundance is not wealthy because of external advantages. They are wealthy because they are thinking abundance thoughts, speaking abundance words, and assuming abundance possibilities. When you truly understand this principle, you realize that you are never at the mercy of external conditions. You are always at the mercy of your own consciousness, and your consciousness is something you can change, something you can direct, something you can master. This means that every single day you have a choice. You can choose to focus on what you lack or what you have. You can choose to see obstacles or opportunities. You can choose to think thoughts that create more limitation, or thoughts that create more abundance. You can choose to speak words that diminish your possibilities, or words that expand them. The problem is that most people make these choices unconsciously. They let their thoughts run wild like untrained animals. They speak carelessly without considering the creative power of their words. They assume that their current limitations are permanent fixtures instead of temporary conditions that can be changed. But you do not have to live this way. You can take conscious control of your thoughts. You can become deliberate with your words. You can examine your assumptions and replace limiting ones with expanding ones. You can become the conscious creator of your own experience instead of the unconscious victim of your circumstances. When you begin to live this way, when you begin to act as if you are surrounded by abundance instead of acting as if you are surrounded by lack, something miraculous happens. The abundance that was always there begins to manifest in forms you can see and touch and use. The opportunities that were always available begin to reveal themselves. The resources that were always present begin to flow into your life. This is not magic. This is not wishful thinking. This is the natural operation of spiritual law. Just as there are physical laws that govern the material world, there are mental and spiritual laws that govern the world of consciousness and manifestation. When you align yourself with these laws, when you work with them instead of against them, you begin to experience the abundance that is your natural inheritance. The question is not whether you have access to abundance. The question is whether you are willing to change your thinking enough to allow that abundance to flow into your life. Are you willing to give up your old thoughts of limitation? Are you willing to stop speaking words of lack? Are you willing to challenge the assumptions that have kept you small? Because here is what I know to be true. Abundance is not something you have to create. Abundance is something you have to accept. It is not something you have to earn. It is something you have to allow. It is not something you have to achieve. It is something you have to receive. And the way you receive it is by changing your consciousness from poverty to plenty, from lack to abundance, from limitation to possibility. The way you receive it is by acting as if you are already surrounded by the abundance you seek, because the truth is you already are. Success comes from growing yourself into the person who naturally attracts the conditions you desire. This is the science of conscious creation, and it operates according to laws as precise as the laws of physics. Think about a farmer preparing his field. Does he plant his seeds and then spend his time worrying about whether they will grow? Does he dig them up every day to check their progress? Does he curse the soil when he cannot see immediate results? Of course not. He understands that there is a natural process of growth that cannot be rushed or forced. He plants his seeds, tends his field, and trusts the process. Your consciousness works exactly the same way. When you plant seeds of abundance thinking, when you cultivate thoughts of prosperity, when you water your mind with words of increase, you are working with the same natural laws that govern all growth and manifestation. But most people plant seeds of poverty one day, seeds of doubt the next day, and then wonder why their harvest is confused and contradictory. How many of you check your bank account multiple times a day, hoping it will somehow change? How many of you plant positive thoughts in the morning and then spend the afternoon digging them up with worry and fear? This is like planting corn and then pouring salt water on it. You are working against the very process you are trying to create. The compound effect governs every area of life, and consciousness is no exception. One day of abundance thinking will not transform your life, just as one day of exercise will not transform your body. But 30 days of consistent abundance thinking will begin to shift your experience. 90 days will create noticeable changes. 365 days will revolutionize your entire existence. Most people underestimate the power of small, consistent changes in consciousness, and overestimate the power of dramatic external actions. They want to make $1 million this year,
but they are not willing to spend 10 minutes each morning conditioning their mind for prosperity. They want perfect relationships, but they will not discipline themselves to think loving thoughts about the people already in their lives. Success is not about giant leaps. Success is about tiny steps taken consistently over time. The person who thinks one prosperous thought every day for a year will experience more abundance than the person who thinks 1,000 prosperous thoughts one day, and then returns to their old patterns of lack and limitation.
This is why most people fail to change their lives. They approach personal transformation like a sprint when it is actually a marathon. They expect immediate results from inconsistent efforts. They want to harvest abundance from occasional positive thinking, but consciousness does not work that way. Life operates in cycles, and understanding these cycles gives you tremendous power over your circumstances. There are seasons of planting, seasons of growth, seasons of harvest, and seasons of rest. Most people try to harvest when they should be planting, or they plant when they should be preparing their soil. Right now, some of you are in a planting season. This is the time to fill your mind with thoughts of abundance, to speak words of prosperity, to act as if you are already living the life you desire. You may not see immediate external results, but this does not mean nothing is happening. Beneath the surface, powerful forces are at work preparing your harvest. Others of you are in a growth season. You have planted good seeds, and now you are seeing the first signs of progress. This is not the time to become impatient or to change your approach. This is the time to continue nurturing your consciousness with the same thoughts and words and actions that created your initial progress. Some of you are entering a harvest season. The abundance you have been cultivating in consciousness is beginning to manifest in your external world. This is not the time to become complacent or to stop the mental work that created your success. This is the time to be grateful, to share your abundance, and to plant even better seeds for your next harvest. And a few of you may be in a rest season, a time when everything seems to be moving slowly or even going backwards. This is not failure. This is preparation. Just as winter prepares the soil for spring planting, challenging periods in your life are preparing you for greater levels of abundance. The key is understanding which season you are in and responding appropriately instead of fighting against the natural rhythm of manifestation. Most people make the mistake of judging their progress only by external results. They plant seeds of abundance and expect to see money in their bank account within a week. When they do not see immediate external changes, they conclude that consciousness work does not work. But consciousness work always works. The question is whether you are giving it enough time and consistency to produce visible results. A farmer who plants corn does not expect to harvest corn the next day. He understands that growth takes time, and he uses that time to prepare for his harvest. You must develop the same patience and persistence with your consciousness work. When you plant thoughts of abundance, you are not just thinking positive thoughts. You are actually rearranging the mental and spiritual forces that create your experience. This rearrangement takes time, but it is absolutely certain to produce results if you persist. Here is what happens when you truly act as if you are surrounded by abundance. First, your perception begins to change. You start noticing opportunities that were always there but were invisible to your poverty consciousness. You begin to see resources that were available but were filtered out by your limiting beliefs. Second, your behavior begins to change. When you think abundant thoughts, you naturally begin to act in abundant ways. You invest in yourself instead of hoarding your resources. You treat people generously instead of being stingy and suspicious. You take calculated risks instead of playing it safe. Third, your energy begins to change. Abundance thinking creates a different vibration, a different feeling, a different presence. People are drawn to this energy because it feels good to be around. Opportunities are attracted to this energy because like attracts like. Fourth, your results begin to change. Not overnight, not dramatically at first, but consistently and unmistakably. The external world begins to reflect the internal changes you have made. Your new consciousness creates new conditions, but here is where most people stumble. They begin to see some success, and they immediately start worrying about losing it. They receive some abundance, and they immediately start thinking thoughts of scarcity. They experience some prosperity, and they immediately begin to doubt whether they deserve it. This is like planting a garden, and then stomping on the plants as soon as they begin to grow. Your old habits of poverty thinking will try to reassert themselves the moment you begin to experience abundance. This is natural. This is expected. This is part of the process. The test of your abundance consciousness is not what you think when things are going well. The test is what you think when challenges arise, when temporary setbacks occur, when appearances suggest that your abundance work is not working. She had been thinking prosperous thoughts, speaking words of increase, acting as if she were already wealthy. Then she received an unexpected bill for $3,000.
Her old poverty consciousness immediately began chattering. See, this abundance stuff does not work. Now you are worse off than before. You should never have believed in this nonsense. But instead of listening to these old thoughts, she used this challenge as an opportunity to strengthen her abundance consciousness. She gave thanks for the bill because it meant she had received a valuable service. She affirmed that the money to pay the bill was already on its way to her. She continued to act as if she were prosperous, instead of acting as if she were broke. Within 2 weeks, she received an unexpected bonus at work that was exactly $3,050 more than the bill she needed to pay. Was this coincidence? Was this luck? No. This was the natural result of maintaining abundance consciousness, even when appearances suggested otherwise.
This is the crucial difference between people who succeed and people who fail. People who succeed understand that external challenges are tests of internal consciousness. They use difficulties as opportunities to strengthen their abundance thinking, instead of evidence that abundance thinking does not work. Every challenge you face is actually an opportunity to prove to yourself that you are truly committed to abundance consciousness. Every setback is a chance to demonstrate that your prosperity thinking is stronger than temporary appearances. Every obstacle is an invitation to act from your abundance consciousness instead of reacting from your poverty consciousness. Most people have this backwards. They wait for external proof before they are willing to think abundant thoughts. They want to see money in their bank account before they are willing to feel prosperous. They want to see opportunities before they are willing to act as if opportunities are available. But consciousness work requires you to think the thoughts, feel the feelings, and take the actions of abundance before you see external proof. This is what faith really means. Not believing without evidence, but acting from your highest consciousness even when your current circumstances suggest otherwise. The person who waits for external permission to think abundant thoughts will wait forever. External conditions are always mixed, always uncertain, always changing. If you base your consciousness on external conditions, your consciousness will be unstable, and your results will be inconsistent. But if you base your consciousness on spiritual principle, if you think abundant thoughts because abundance is true in the spiritual world regardless of what appears in the physical world, then your consciousness becomes stable and your results become predictable. This is the science of conscious creation. Consciousness is cause, conditions are effect. Change the cause and you automatically change the effect. Maintain the cause consistently and you will maintain the effect consistently. This is not theory. This is practical metaphysics that works with mathematical precision. The person who masters this science becomes a conscious creator instead of an unconscious victim. They stop reacting to life and start creating life. They stop letting circumstances determine their thoughts and start letting their thoughts determine their circumstances. They stop hoping for change and start knowing that change is inevitable when consciousness changes. This is how you move from limitation to abundance, from poverty to prosperity, from struggle to success, not by changing what is happening around you, but by changing what is happening within you, not by manipulating external forces, but by mastering internal forces, not by trying to control circumstances, but by taking conscious control of the consciousness that creates circumstances. Now you know the truth about consciousness creating conditions. You understand the science behind manifestation, but knowing these principles and applying them are two completely different things. Most people sabotage their own success with behaviors so automatic, so habitual, that they do not even realize they are destroying their abundance before it can manifest. Right now, how many of you are mentally listing all the reasons why this abundance consciousness cannot work for you? How many of you are thinking about your bills, your debts, your circumstances, your limitations? This is exactly what I am talking about. You have been given the key to unlimited prosperity, and your first instinct is to explain why the key will not work for your particular lock. This is the mentality of poverty, and it will keep you poor no matter how much money you make. Poverty mentality says yes, but what about my situation? Abundance mentality says how can I apply this principle to my situation? Poverty mentality focuses on obstacles. Abundance mentality focuses on opportunities. Poverty mentality asks, what if it does not work? Abundance mentality asks, what if it does work? The person with abundance mentality wakes up each morning thinking, what good can I create today? How can I serve? How can I grow? How can I contribute? The person with poverty mentality wakes up thinking, what problems will I face today? What could go wrong? How will I survive? How can I protect what little I have? Notice the difference. The abundance mind is focused on creating and giving. The poverty mind is focused on protecting and hoarding. The abundance mind assumes good things are possible. The poverty mind assumes the worst is likely. The abundance mind looks for solutions. These are not just different ways of thinking. These are different ways of living that produce completely different results. The person who thinks abundance thoughts all day long creates an abundant life. The person who thinks poverty thoughts all day long creates a life of limitation and struggle. But here is what stops most people from changing their thinking patterns. They have become addicted to their problems.
They have become so comfortable with struggle that they actually resist abundance when it tries to enter their lives. They would rather be right about their limitations than be wrong about their possibilities. Listen to the conversations around you. How much time do people spend discussing their problems compared to discussing their possibilities? How much energy do they invest in explaining why they cannot succeed compared to planning how they will succeed? How much attention do they give to what is wrong with the world compared to what is right with their opportunities?
This is not an accident. This is a choice. Every moment of every day, you are choosing where to focus your attention. You are choosing what thoughts to think, what words to speak, what feelings to feel. And these choices are creating your life experience, moment by moment. The successful person makes different choices than the unsuccessful person, not occasionally, but consistently, not just in big moments, but in small moments, not just when they feel like it, but especially when they do not feel like it. Success is a daily discipline, not a one-time event. Abundance is a way of life, not a lucky accident. Prosperity is a consciousness you cultivate, not a prize you win. So what are the daily disciplines that create extraordinary results? What are the specific practices that transform poverty consciousness into abundance consciousness? What are the exact steps you must take every single day to act as if you are surrounded by abundance? First, you must master your morning mind. The thoughts you think in the first hour of every day set the tone for everything that follows. Most people wake up and immediately begin thinking about their problems, their fears, their limitations, their lack. They check their bank balance, read negative news, focus on everything that is wrong with their lives. This is like poisoning your mind before you even begin your day. You are programming yourself for struggle, limitation, and frustration. You are starting each day by reinforcing the very consciousness that created the problems you want to solve. Instead, begin each day by conditioning your mind for abundance. Before you check your phone, before you read the news, before you think about your problems, spend 15 minutes filling your mind with thoughts of prosperity, gratitude, and possibility. Give thanks for the abundance that is already present in your life. Appreciate your health, your home, your family, your opportunities. Be grateful for the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food you eat. Recognize that you are already surrounded by wealth beyond measure. Then, instead of thinking about what you lack, think about what you are creating. Instead of focusing on current limitations, focus on future possibilities. Instead of rehearsing problems, rehearse solutions. Spend time seeing yourself already living the abundant life you desire. Feel how it feels to be prosperous. Experience the emotions of success. Act as if you are already the person you want to become. This is not pretending or denying reality. This is creating reality by aligning your consciousness with the abundance that is seeking to express through you. Second, you must watch your words throughout the day. Your words are not just communication tools. Your words are creative forces that are constantly shaping your experience. Every time you say, "I cannot afford it," you are creating more experiences of not being able to afford things. Every time you say, "Money is tight," you are tightening the flow of money into your life. Stop speaking poverty into existence. Stop using words that create limitation. Stop making casual statements that reinforce lack and struggle. Instead, speak words that create abundance, that open up possibilities, that affirm your prosperity. When someone asks how you are doing, instead of saying "just getting by," say "living abundantly." Instead of saying "business is slow," say "business is building." Instead of saying "I hope things get better," say "things are getting better every day." This is not lying. This is aligning your words with your highest vision, instead of your current circumstances. This is speaking from your abundance consciousness, instead of your poverty consciousness. This is using your words to create the future you want, instead of perpetuating the past you want to leave behind. Third, you must act from abundance, even when appearances suggest scarcity. This is the most difficult but most powerful practice. When you receive a bill, pay it with gratitude instead of resentment. When you spend money, spend it joyfully instead of fearfully. When you invest in yourself, invest confidently instead of reluctantly. Treat your money like a beloved friend instead of a scarce resource that might disappear. Treat opportunities like abundant gifts instead of rare prizes that you must fight to obtain. Treat success like your natural inheritance instead of something you must struggle to deserve. The way you handle small amounts of money determines how you will handle large amounts of money. The way you manage limited resources determines how you will manage abundant resources. The way you think about money when you have little determines how much money you will have. Fourth, you must surround yourself with abundance consciousness instead of poverty consciousness. The people you spend time with, the books you read, the programs you watch, the conversations you participate in, all of these are either reinforcing abundance consciousness or poverty consciousness in your mind. If your friends constantly complain about money, talk about how hard life is,
Focus on problems instead of solutions. You are being programmed for poverty every time you spend time with them. If the news you consume focuses on scarcity, crisis, and limitation, you are filling your mind with poverty consciousness every day. Choose your influences carefully. Spend time with people who think abundantly, who speak prosperously, who act successfully. Read books that expand your consciousness instead of books that confirm your limitations. Listen to programs that inspire possibility instead of programs that reinforce problems. You cannot create abundance consciousness while surrounding yourself with poverty consciousness. You cannot develop prosperity thinking while immersing yourself in scarcity thinking. You cannot act as if you are surrounded by abundance while constantly exposing yourself to messages of lack and limitation.
Fifth, you must measure your progress by your consciousness, not just your circumstances. Most people give up on abundance consciousness because they expect to see immediate external changes. They think abundant thoughts for a week and then check their bank account to see if anything has happened. But consciousness change always precedes circumstance change. Your inner world must shift before your outer world can shift. Your thinking must change before your conditions can change. Your consciousness must be transformed before your life can be transformed. Learn to recognize the signs of growing abundance consciousness. Notice when you feel more optimistic about your future. Celebrate when you catch yourself thinking abundant thoughts automatically. Appreciate when you find yourself speaking words of increase instead of words of decrease. These internal changes are actually more important than external changes, because they are the foundation from which all external changes come. A person with strong abundance consciousness will always attract abundant circumstances eventually. But a person with weak abundance consciousness will lose abundant circumstances even if they temporarily acquire them. Finally, you must persist through the inevitable challenges and temporary setbacks that will test your commitment to abundance consciousness. Every person who develops true prosperity thinking goes through periods when appearances suggest that the principles are not working. These testing periods are not evidence that abundance consciousness fails. These testing periods are opportunities to prove that your abundance consciousness is stronger than temporary circumstances. They are chances to demonstrate that your prosperity thinking is based on spiritual principle, not external conditions. When challenges arise, when setbacks occur, when appearances suggest lack, this is exactly when you must act most strongly from abundance consciousness. This is when you must think the most prosperous thoughts, speak the most positive words, take the most confident actions. The person who can maintain abundance consciousness during challenging times is the person who will experience abundance during all times. The person who only thinks abundantly when circumstances are good is the person who will experience inconsistent and temporary abundance. You now have everything you need to transform your life from limitation to abundance. You understand the principle, consciousness creates conditions. You know the process, consistent abundance thinking creates abundant circumstances. You have the practices, morning conditioning, careful speech, abundant actions, positive influences, consciousness measurement, and persistent application. The only question remaining is this: will you use what you now know? Will you act on what you now understand? Will you commit to the daily disciplines that create extraordinary results? The abundance you seek is not somewhere in the future waiting for you to find it. The abundance you seek is here right now, surrounding you, waiting for you to accept it through the transformation of your consciousness. You are not poor because the world lacks resources. You are not struggling because opportunities are scarce. You are experiencing limitation because you have not yet learned to act as if you are surrounded by abundance. Today, this moment, you can begin to change everything. You can choose abundance consciousness over poverty consciousness. You can choose prosperity thinking over scarcity thinking. You can choose to act as if you are surrounded by infinite abundance because you are. The universe is abundant. Life is abundant. Opportunity is abundant. Resources are abundant. The only thing that has ever been scarce is your recognition of this abundance. Change your consciousness and you change your world. Act as if you are surrounded by abundance, and abundance will surround you in forms you can see, touch, and use. Your abundant life begins now.